The battlefield stank of ozone and scorched earth, the sky above still crackling from the last volley of orbital strikes. Dr. Vexel of the Karate Medical Corps stepped delicately over the charred remains of what had once been a combat walker, its legs twisted like tortured metal vines. His 4 fingers trembled on his med scanner as it pinged, life, nearby. Faint, irregular, and human. The translator bead in his throat clicked. Life form detected. Human signature. Approximately 20 meters to the north. Beside him, medic specialist Jurin hissed, her cranial frowns rippling with apprehension. We were told the humans retreated. There shouldn't be any left alive. They shouldn't be. Vexel agreed. He stepped forward cautiously, antennae twitching with the static-charged wind. The human was slumped against the collapsed bunker wall, chest heaving shallowly. Blood soaked through the front of his armor in thick black ribbons, the wound clearly abdominal, likely lethal without immediate surgical intervention. But he wasn't crying out. He wasn't even calling for help. He was humming? Vexel's mandibles clacked in confusion. The human, tall, muscular, face smeared with ash and blood, glanced up. His eyes locked onto Vexel's with a predator's calm. Then, with agonizing slowness, the man pulled a long combat knife from his belt. It shimmered dull red, already hot from some jury-rigged heating coil. What is he doing? Jurin asked, already stepping back. Stay still, Vexel whispered. The human grit his teeth and without ceremony, shoved the blade into his own abdomen, directly into the wound. A sizzling crack filled the air, like meat dropped onto a hot pan. The flesh blackened instantly. Smoke curled up from the cauterized gash. Vexel's throat sacs convulsed. The human screamed, no, roared, a guttural sound that shuddered through the wreckage around them. Then he exhaled, wiped his brow with a soot-stained hand, and stood. He staggered once. Then, inexplicably, he smiled. Patch job behold, he muttered to himself, voice hoarse but steady. Damn knife's better than field sealant. Vexel stepped forward, scanner humming. You require medical assistance, he said, carefully enunciating each word through the translator. The human chuckled, a low, tired noise. Appreciate the concern, document. But I've still got fight left. And orders. You're grievously injured. Internal bleeding. Nerve trauma. No sedation. I cauterized it. The human interrupted. Pain's just the bill you pay to stay alive. Jurin made a choked noise. That's madness. The human glanced at her. No, lady. That's survival. Vexel had seen karate warriors collapse from lesser wounds. Had watched AVIX commandos pass out mid-sentence from bone fractures. This man, this thing, had just cooked his own organs and was preparing to return to combat. Why? Vexel asked softly. Why not rest? Wait for evac? You've done your part. The human adjusted the strap of his rifle and nodded toward the horizon, where faint shapes moved in the smoke. Because my squad's out there. If I don't get back, maybe they don't make it. And I'm not about to let that happen. Vexel's translator struggled with the next phrase, parsing emotion and idiom. Pain is weakness leaving the body. He stared, stunned. The human offered a 2-fingered salute, then limped off into the haze, disappearing within seconds. Jurin remained frozen, her tendrils flat against her skull. That was unnatural. No, Vexel said slowly. That was human. He tapped his med scanner again, though it felt almost useless now. Log this. Full biological report. Timestamp. We've just witnessed something that defies our understanding of sentient tolerance thresholds. Jurin didn't move. I said log it. She nodded stiffly and obeyed, voice shaking as she dictated. Subject, human combatant. Severe abdominal trauma. Self-cauterization procedure using improvised thermal blade. Immediate return to combat zone post-treatment. No sedatives. No panic. Psychological state, focused, possibly euphoric. No signs of rational self-preservation override. Vexel turned back toward the evac crawler. The wind picked up, lifting swirls of ash around his boots. Do you think, Jurin asked after a pause, they feel fear at all? Vexel hesitated. Perhaps. But if they do, they've made it irrelevant. As they boarded the crawler, another distress ping echoed from the ruins behind them, another human, likely injured. Vexel's mandibles clicked softly as he considered it. Would they find another like the first? Would this one scream, plead, beg for help? Or would he simply set himself on fire and walk through it? The crawler doors sealed shut. The war wasn't over. But something fundamental had changed. Confidential report. Coalition Allied Species Medical Division. Field observations. Homo sapiens combat class. Prepared by Dr. Vexel, Karate Medical Corps. Date: Cycle 442, Rotation 17. Begin transmission. I submit this report with caution and urgency. What follows is not speculative or theoretical. These are first-hand accounts and biological observations of Homo sapiens encountered during recent field recovery missions on the Scythe Ridge front. The behaviors recorded defy conventional sentient norms. While I strive to maintain scientific objectivity, I confess my clinical detachment has been compromised. My first direct contact was with a human soldier who had cauterized his own abdominal wound using a thermal blade. He rejected sedation, field aid, and even medical evacuation. Instead, he returned to active combat with compromised mobility and untreated internal trauma. Initial assumptions that this was an anomalous case have since been proven incorrect. Case study number 2, Recovery Point Delta 3. Subject female, age estimate 35 Terran years. Wounded by shrapnel across left thigh and lower abdomen. Despite visible bone exposure and severe muscle tearing, subject applied a chemical coagulant with bare hands while reciting, aloud, the names of her fallen squadmates. No visible indicators of pain reflex, no tremors, no scream, no dilation spikes. Subject then extracted a broken alloy spike from her leg using pliers and resumed command of her unit. Karate medics approached under white flag conditions. Subject responded, "You patch me up later. Right now I've got work." Case study number 3, Orbital Outpost K-11, post-assault phase. Subject male, deceased. Cause of death, kinetic impact through upper thorax. However, data logs retrieved from the onboard suit AI recorded that the subject had been mortally wounded 7 minutes prior to death. During that time, subject disabled 3 enemy drone units, guided a crippled comrade to safety, and manually overloaded a failing reactor core to prevent capture. Only upon system shutdown did the body collapse. Post-mortem review revealed full adrenal saturation, neurological signal override consistent with a state humans refer to as fight through. It is not a survival mechanism. It is, by all measures, deliberate. From a physiological standpoint, humans are unremarkable. Their skeletal structure is fragile by pan-galactic standards. Their cardiovascular and respiratory systems operate under constant duress, often flirting with inefficiency. Yet when engaged in combat scenarios, they exhibit a phenomenon no species in the coalition has successfully catalogued: trauma denial. This is not ignorance. It is not stupidity or chemical suppression. It is, quite literally, the choice to disregard suffering. In my discussions with allied species medics, Avixi, Chularin, and Tari alike, a shared conclusion is forming: humans experience pain, but assign it less value than we do. Not due to lack of intellect, but due to cultural normalization. One Chularin field operative stated, "They treat injury as a badge. If one is still breathing, they believe themselves fit to fight." Another, more chilling testimony came from a captured mercenary commander who faced human resistance during a failed assault on Outpost Brenner. "We shot one in the neck," he said. "He bled like any other. We assumed he'd crawl off. Instead, he stuffed the wound with ration cloth, lit it on fire, and charged. We lost 6 men to a dying soldier." Data continues to accumulate. Fragments of intercepted human comms reveal unsettling mantras. "Pain is the cost of doing business. Suck it up, soldier. If you can feel it, you ain't dead. These are not idle sayings. They form the bedrock of an ethos alien to most sapient species, a philosophy wherein agony is a distraction to be ignored, and death itself is not feared if duty remains unfinished. Coalition analysts suggest this behavior stems from millennia of internal conflict on Earth. Their species evolved under brutal, unrelenting conditions: disease, war, famine, isolation. While others advanced through diplomacy and mutual cooperation, humans refined endurance. Their brains adapted to accept suffering as an inevitability. This makes them terrifying. We cannot predict them. In every model of sentient warfare, pain is a deterrent. Injury slows combat efficiency. But for humans, pain seems to sharpen intent. Injury becomes fuel. If I may speculate, where we see wounds, they see reminders. Where we flee fire, they walk through it. Where others hesitate, humans advance. My medical training cannot explain it. My instincts wish to flee it. End report segment. Vexel leaned back from the console, mandibles twitching with unease. He'd written hundreds of reports over his long career, on viral outbreaks, biochemical anomalies, battlefield injuries, but never something that made his stomach twist. A knock rapped against the edge of the lab door. "Enter," he said, voice hoarse. Jurin stepped inside. Her fronds were slicked with antiseptic solution, and her white coat was stained orange with congealed plasma. "Another one," she said, not meeting his gaze. "They brought in a male. One arm gone. No sedation. He asked us to cauterize the stump and kept making jokes." "Jokes, Vexel?" He exhaled slowly. "And the pain threshold scans?" She held up a reader. The display pulsed with red and gold. "Off the chart. Again. Just like the others." Vexel turned back to his console. "I'm submitting the full field report to command. You think they'll believe us?" He stared at the blinking cursor. "They'll have to. Or they won't survive what's coming." From down the corridor, a deep voice called out in accented karate. "Hey, Doc? That arm you sewed up, it holding okay? I've got a mission brief in 10. Jurin flinched. Vexel didn't turn around. He just muttered, "Pain is weakness leaving the body, they say." Jurin whispered back, "Then they must be the strongest creatures alive." 2. The ambush hit just after dawn. 5th Recon, Human Division, had barely cleared the ravine when the ridge above erupted in plasma fire. Shrieking beams rained down like wrathful stars, shredding rock and armor alike. The squad scattered, returning fire with disciplined bursts, but it was a kill box, classic Varshak trap. 3 humans dropped in the first 10 seconds. Another screamed as molten shrapnel tore through his thigh. Sergeant Lennox didn't scream. He was too busy dragging Private Kincaid behind a boulder while firing one-handed. A crimson bolt punched through Lennox's side. He grunted, collapsed, and pulled his sidearm with his uninjured hand. Kincaid tried to reach him, but the sergeant snarled, "Cover the right flank." Now. It was a wound that would paralyze most species. The bolt had burned clean through muscle and rib, cauterizing as it went. Lennox coughed, spat blood, and fished a canister from his belt pouch. It was labeled, "Emergency Field Sterilizer, Type 7. Not intended for internal use." He twisted off the top, poured it into the smoldering hole, and bit down on his own dog tags. The chemical hissed. His eyes rolled. But he never stopped scanning the ridge. Kincaid shouted something, orders or a curse. Lennox didn't hear. The pain was a roar in his skull, but beneath it ran something deeper: duty. Across the canyon, alien observers watched from the camouflaged command nest. One, a Varshak strategist named Urix, clicked his jaws in confusion. "They are injured. They should retreat. Why do they press forward?" Beside him, a karate liaison medic, Dr. Vexel, watched the humans with dread he no longer tried to hide. "Because they've decided they won't die today," Urix scoffed. "Decided? Death is not a matter of choice." Vexel gestured toward the ridge. A human soldier with both legs crushed was crawling uphill, rifle clutched in shaking hands, dragging himself by sheer will. His squad had moved past him, not in abandonment, but trust. They knew he'd follow. Another soldier, Kincaid, according to previous intel, vaulted over a ridge, caught a plasma graze across the jaw, and kept moving. He reached the enemy line, screaming a guttural war cry, and detonated a microcharge at close range. The explosion staggered even the hardened Varshak forward line. Urix took a step back. "They are suicidal." "No," Vexel whispered. "They are relentless." Back on the field, Lennox was on his feet again. He had wrapped his torso in thermoplastic gauze, which pulsed faintly from embedded nanofibers. Every breath was fire. His vision blurred. But he moved, step by step, up the incline. Around him, the few remaining members of 5th Recon converged, not out of desperation, but retaliation. It was no longer about winning the skirmish. It was about reminding the enemy that pain would not slow them. That wounding a human meant they'd only get closer. And they did. They took the ridge. By the time the last Varshak fell, screaming into the dust, Sergeant Lennox stood swaying, helmet missing, face a blood-streaked mask of resolve. "Check your gear. Get the wounded stabilized. This isn't over." Kincaid limped up beside him, cradling a burn along his arm. "Sergeant, we're at 60% casualties." Lennox nodded. "Which means 40% of us are still breathing. We hold here until backup. Then we push." In the alien nest, Urix turned to Vexel, his voice tight. "What do we do against that?" Vexel didn't answer immediately. He replayed the footage again, humans screaming, bleeding, breaking, and still moving forward. He finally said, "We learned to avoid them." Urix looked as though he might object, but stopped. He saw the same thing Vexel did, not soldiers, but force incarnate. Later, in the medical tent, Vexel tended to the humans who had allowed treatment. One man had a tourniquet so tight his arm was turning gray. Another had wrapped gauze directly around exposed muscle and claimed he didn't feel a thing. Vexel knew that wasn't true. He saw the flickers of pain in their eyes, but they refused to acknowledge it. "Do you want pain inhibitors?" he asked gently. The nearest soldier looked up. His face was pale, sweat-drenched, but calm. "Waste of meds. Document someone else might need them. You were shot twice." "Yeah. Once clean through. Once just a kiss." Vexel stepped away, shaking his head. He turned on his recorder. "Memo: Alien Behavioral Protocols Update. Effective immediately, Coalition personnel are advised to avoid direct close-quarters engagement with human combatants. Priority should be placed on distance-based suppression or retreat. Injury does not neutralize a human. It enrages them. Death may be the only stopping mechanism, but even that is often delayed. Recommend reevaluation of combat classification. Homo sapiens to be upgraded from Category 4 combatant to Category 6 threat, on par with Silith berserkers and maelstrom predators." He stopped recording, hesitated, then added one last note. "If they bleed, do not rejoice. Brace. Because if they bleed and still stand, you will not." 3.